Hey everybody, welcome back to another very exciting Adobe Live. This is a very special Adobe Live since we're doing an Adobe Express Bootcamp. Today we're going to do Photoshop and Adobe Express. I'm going to show you how to take your, whoops, sorry about that. It looks like I didn't mute my screen here. Sorry about that. Today we're going to take your composites in Photoshop and show you how to animate them so that you can share them on social media. It's going to be a fantastic stream. I encourage you to stay to the very, very end. Let me switch over into my screen now. And the first thing I want to talk about is the page for the Adobe Express Bootcamp, which is here. Make sure that you go to it and scroll to the bottom and click on the Remix Jesus's template link. This is very important. I suggest that you do that now so that you have it uploaded when we start working on the project for today. So make sure that you remix Jesus's template here. Also, when you're on this page, make sure that you check out the other streamers. Andrew was on yesterday with Illustrator and Adobe Express, and we're going to have more streams throughout the week showing you how to do different things with Adobe Express and some of the Adobe applications that you already know and love. So make sure that you check it out. Also, thank you to everybody in the chat saying hello. It's great to see people from all over the world. I see people in California and Kansas City, and that's actually where I'm at right now, Kansas City, and Houston, Texas, from everywhere. So hello. I can't say hello to everybody, but I am reading the messages. If you have any questions, make sure that you drop them in the chat, and I'll try to get to as many as I can. We're only going to be on for about 25 minutes. I have a lot to cover, so why don't we jump into Photoshop? But again, make sure that you click on the Remix Jesus's template. So this is the session for today, Photoshop and Adobe Express. Let's start just by introducing who I am and a little bit about me in case you don't know who I am. My name is Jesus Ramirez. I run a YouTube channel called the Photoshop Training Channel. You might be familiar with that. It's one of the world's leading YouTube channels when it comes to Photoshop training. Make sure that you check it out. In case you're not familiar with my work, I've done professional design work for companies like Adobe, Microsoft, Motorola. Most recently, I've been working on movie posters in the Hollywood industry. I've been working, creating some of the posters that you see here on screen, among others. And in these type of projects, obviously they're composites, and I do, for those of you that know about my work, I do a lot of compositing work, and sometimes you need to create marketing pieces for yourself just to show off your work online, like on Behance and all the other social medias. And a tool that I like using to create some of these assets for social media is Adobe Express, and that's what this session is going to be all about. So instead of using one of the composites that I've done professionally, I'm going to use a composite that I did here on Adobe Live back in December of 2021. And this is it right here. So if you want to see how this composite was created, make sure that you check out Adobe Live. You can just type in my name on the Adobe Live YouTube channel, and you'll be able to see how this composite was created. But as you can see, it's a composite that was used primarily with Adobe stock images. And notice that everything is very well organized. Everything is named. So that's something that you really need to do when you're working at a high level professionally. Everything needs to be labeled. Everything needs to be organized so you can, it's a modularized way of working. In case somebody wants to change something, you can do so. Or in this case, we're going to take the different folders and put them into Creative Cloud Library so that we can work with them in other applications like Adobe Express. So let's, and I'm looking at the chat in case there's any questions. So make sure that you leave them down below. So after you create a composite, and you want to display it elsewhere, it's a good idea to take the composite and break it down into different pieces so that you can manipulate it with animation and other things like that in other applications. You could, of course, use Adobe Premiere, you could use Adobe After Effects, but it's much easier to use Adobe Express for a lot of reasons, and that's what this session is going to be all about. So these are all my layers here that create this composite. And I have to think about how I'm going to animate this in other applications. So if you think about it, we have our background layer, we have our talent group here, which contains all these layers with the character, and we have the background, the foreground elements right up here, and the final adjustments. So what I need to do is decide how I'm going to break this apart so that I can animate it elsewhere. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to just think about how I'm going to go into Express. And I know that I want to have the background and the foreground together, but then all these extra elements are going to be in separate layers, so then I can animate them and create a really cool parallax effect. And that's going to be in the other applications there. So how do I get this into Express and into all the other Adobe applications, not just Express? Creative Cloud Libraries. So you can go into your libraries panel here on the top right. If you don't see it, you can go into Window and make sure you select Libraries, and then this will come up. And you have all these different libraries, and you can just create a new one. I can just call this one Adobe Express Bootcamp. And I missed a space there, Adobe Express Bootcamp. Click on Create, and this Creative Cloud library will sync to all your Creative Cloud apps that are logged in using the same account. So to add content to them, all you need to do is decide, first of all, what will be shown on that particular layer that will be exported to the Creative Cloud. In this case, I want to have my background and my talent in one single quote unquote layer. So then I have these two groups active, but I also want to have the effect, the color effect that I apply to the image. So in that case, I'm going to enable my final effects group here that contains the image you're applying that final color effect. So now I have these three groups active. What I can do now is click on the plus icon and select graphic right here in my libraries panel, right down here, this little plus icon, click on graphic. What that will do is that will place the elements that are on screen now onto my Creative Cloud. And there it is, it's uploading. Now, when you do that, you have to make sure that you have the right groups active. I didn't do that. I only had my final adjustments group active, and notice that this is blank. So that's not going to work. So you have to be very careful and make sure that you select the groups that you want to import. So I need to select the final adjustments group because that's applying the color effect. And I need to select my talent. To select two groups, you can hold the Control key on Windows, that's the Command key on the Mac, and click on the groups that you want to select. And notice now that they're both selected. The foreground elements group is not selected, and it's also disabled so that we don't see it. Now, if I click on this icon and click on graphic, Photoshop will upload the two selected images onto the libraries panel. And you can rename it, of course, if you want to stay organized. So I will do that. I'll right click, select rename, and I'll just call this group talent, because that's my talent. And notice what happened here. This is actually quite interesting. Notice that this talent group doesn't have a background, even though the image shown on screen does. That's because I selected only these two groups and added them to the Creative Cloud library. So even though the background was showing, it didn't add it to the Creative Cloud library, which is a fantastic feature. Cool. And I'm looking at the chat just to see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions, so I guess I'll keep going. And I just realized I have to keep scrolling down so that I could actually see any comments that come up. But what I'm going to do now is add the background to my Creative Cloud library. So I'll select that group, nothing else, and I will add the graphic. So now I have the background. I also want to add the foreground elements as a separate group. So that will create the parallax effect when we add all this stuff together in Adobe Express. So with this group selected, notice that it has a black background, and that's okay. We're not going to worry about that. In Adobe Express, we're going to be able to blend the layers together using blending modes. So with the foreground elements, I can click on the plus icon and add the graphic. And it'll take just a second. Let me try that again. It didn't take it, so let me do it one more time. For some reason, it doesn't want to add it. That's one of the issues that happens when you go live. Let me try that one more time and see if it finally adds it. If not, I have a backup library that has all these elements. So for now, we're not going to worry about Photoshop not wanting to upload this particular graphic as a Creative Cloud asset. I already have that in the in a separate Creative Cloud library, just in case something like this happened. I'll try one more time just in case, but if not, then we'll just go with the other one. Okay, no worries. What I'm going to do now is go into express.adobe.com, And this is where you can make sure that you have this up and running when you're following along, so that you can be sure that you're logged in and start working immediately. But instead of creating a project from scratch, what I want you to do is go into the Express Bootcamp webpage and click on Remix Jesus's template. Click on that. That will open up this Adobe Express project, and just click on Remix this design. And that will load up. As you see there, it'll take just a second. So make sure that you do that now so that you can follow along, and you can try it with your own images. This template is already sized up to be the aspect ratio of a movie poster, which is fantastic. And this note here tells you that you can add animations, text effects, transform your designs, anything you want to do for social media. So I'm just going to delete that because we don't need it. You can just hit the backspace key on that. We have the background image and we have the text that we're going to create. So what we're going to do first is click on the background, and you'll notice on the right-hand side on the properties panel, it reads edit background. And what you want to do is replace it with your images. Now, if you just click on replace here, that's going to take you into an Adobe stock search bar that you can find Adobe stock assets. It's fantastic. But in this case, we're not going to do that. We're just going to bring in our own images from the libraries panel. And from here, you can just click on the Adobe Express Bootcamp library that you created. And I'm going to click on the background. And actually, something that I didn't do here, what I really wanted to do was select the background, the talent, and the final adjustments, and export that as a single thing instead of doing it separately. But that's okay, no worries. I have this project here on my Creative Cloud libraries where I did that already, where I have the main element and the background in one single layer, and I can just place it anywhere you want. The weird thing about the background, and it's actually kind of helpful because it helps you visualize. When you're working with a background image, you don't have the transformation handles to scale the image. So instead you have to use this slider. So that's how you know you're in the background image. So the background image is a little bit different than all the others. It animates separately, which is what's going to create the parallax effect. So I'm just going to place my character here, right about there. He looks pretty good right around there. And then I have another Creative Cloud asset, which is the lightning. So when I add the lightning, notice that the lightning comes in pretty small, but that's okay. We can actually scale that up. Notice the difference now. This is no longer a background image, it's just a regular image. So I do get the transformation handles on each corner, and I can click and drag and place this into position. Cool. And the next problem that we need to solve is, well, the original image obviously had the lightning and the debris exploding in the bottom as the foreground element, and the black was invisible. You couldn't see it. So how can we replicate that effect here on Adobe Express? Adobe Express gives us access to 3 blending modes: normal, multiply, and screen. For those of you who are a little more familiar with Photoshop, you'll know that the multiply blending mode keeps the darker pixels and hides the brighter pixels. We don't want that. We want the opposite, which is what screen does. Screen hides the darker pixels, but keeps the brighter ones. So once we do that, notice that we can place the lightning anywhere we want. And I would recommend that when you're trying to create that parallax effect, that you make your layers much larger than they were originally, so that when you animate the graphic, you have more room to play with, and the parallax effect is more noticeable, and it looks a little better in my opinion. And also notice here, we have a layers panel. We have the background layer here. We have the lightning layer here on top, and we can click and drag those. So if you wanted to place the lightning layer below the text layer, you can certainly do so. I have my tagline, I have my main title. So you can click on these text layers that are there in the template for you, and you can just change the title to anything you want. So for now, it reads main title, but I can change it to heroes or anything else I want. And I think I misspelled that. I added an extra A, I think. Cool. And on the tagline, I can change it to something else like Adobe Live or anything I want, right? And if I'm unhappy with the fonts, I can select the layer here And then I can use the sliders here to control the font size and anything else I want. So maybe I'll make it 132, whatever you want to do with the text. Totally up to you. Now, when you have this set up, you can go into the animations panel here and click on animation, and you can apply animations to text and to the photo. And what I want to do is apply the animation to the photo. I'm going to click on zoom and then click on this icon here to check them out. See that? That's one. This is another. And I kind of like this one, the one that kind of zooms out like so. And notice that effect that it's creating there. See, that's how the lightning just comes in. It looks pretty cool. And if you're unhappy with the result, you can always add more elements to create better animations. For example, you can go into the Photos tab here and use the free images on Adobe Stock to add to your composite if you want. So for example, you can add the word lightning, search. This one looks pretty good. I'll go with the first one. I can just select the first one. Excuse me, select the first one. It will add it to my layers, and I can just scale this up like so and place it accordingly. I'll place it here on the side. And remember the blending mode that we used earlier? We're going to use the same one. I'll click on the drop down and select the screen blending mode again. Screen hides dark pixels and it keeps the brightest ones. This layer, however, was much brighter than the previous layer that we used. So you get this white haze over the image, and we can fix that. In Express, we have these enhancements options here that gives us control over contrast, brightness, saturations, highlights and shadows, warmth, and sharpening. So what we can do is we can increase the contrast and then make the shadows darker so that the lightning stands out and you don't have that white haze over the image. You can also adjust the brightness if you wish. You can just make the image a little bit darker, again, to hide the brighter pixels, because with the screen blending mode, darker pixels disappear. They become invisible. One of the questions in the chat is, how do I align layers? One of the cool things about Express is that it gives you these guides over the canvas as you work. So notice that as I select one of these layers and move it around, you get these cyan guides that allow me to center the image if I want to the canvas and things like that. So one of the ways of aligning in Express is simply by using the on-screen guides. So I hope that that answers your question. Cool. Anyway, so I was working with this file here, or this layer here that we brought in from Adobe Stock. I'll make it a little bit larger and just place it here on the side. Also notice that the lightning's a little different. That lightning has orange, yellow in it, and that's totally okay if it does. If you want to keep it, that works great. But if not, go back into the enhancements dropdown and you can adjust the warmth. See that? I can make that yellow if you want to create a completely different contrasting effect, or if you want to match it to the original, you can go into the, you can reduce the warmth to cool it up and make it blue. So totally up to you how you want to adjust the lightning. And you can increase the sharpening if you like, completely up to you. But now when I go back into the animation, I have a completely different look. You can see that there. We have this lightning coming up, just covering the front, and that creates that cool parallax effect. And you can use this anywhere you like. Let me see if there's any more questions here in the chat. Looks like. Okay, looks like there's no questions in the chat. That's pretty good. And one cool thing that you can do in Photoshop, because I know I wanted to show some cool Photoshop tricks, and we're going to get back to Express in a moment because there's a couple of things I want to show you. But let me just close these layers here. And you know what? I'm going to close Photoshop because I wanted to show you something. If you go into your Creative Cloud app here, where you download your apps, you have Adobe Express here. So this is how you would turn on Adobe Express. You would enable it. And one of the other cool things is that we have public beta releases for different apps, including Photoshop. So under beta apps, you can actually have access to the beta Photoshop public release. You can click on open, and all this was shown in Adobe Max about a month ago, or maybe even less, a couple of weeks ago. But during Adobe Max, the new public beta release of Photoshop showed some really cool features that I really wanted to show you. So one of the things that you can do is once you open up the beta version of Photoshop, you have access to this tool called the backdrop generator. Let me show you how that works. You can create a new layer, fill it with whatever color you want. The color really doesn't matter. Then you can go into filter and select neural filters. From here, you're going to see this thing called the backdrop creator. Enable that. And this uses AI to generate content. You can use the prompt that's already inputted into the box there if you want. You can use some of the popular prompts that Adobe has ready to go. All you need to do is click on create, or you can input your own. So in this case, I can type in something like lightning, sky, HD photo. I find that if you use the words or the keywords HD photo, the AI generates a higher resolution image or a better looking image. You can click on create, and you can see right now that Photoshop is generating images based on the prompt that I added in there. So if you don't want to use Adobe stock, or you don't find quite what you like, then you can use some of these photos here. I didn't like any of those, so maybe I can try adding something else. Maybe I'll click on create again and see the new ones that it generates. But you can see it generated different skies. Maybe I should have used the word bolt, maybe like lightning bolt sky or something like that. But the point is that every time you generate the image, you get different, you click on that generate button, you get different results. So let me try the word bolt and see how that looks. Lightning bolt sky HD. One of the questions in the chat is, could I do this in Photoshop Desktop? I'm assuming the question is, could I do the animations in Photoshop Desktop? And the answer is, you could, but it will take a lot more work, and it's not as intuitive, and it's not drag and drop like it is with Adobe Express. So now you can see that we actually got some lightning bolts. So assuming that I like this image, I can select it, and maybe I'll select a few others. I'll select these three. I can click on OK, and now those images will be generated and assigned to my layers panel. So here it is, and there's the lightning, there's the other one with the sky, and I can also add these to my Creative Cloud libraries and use them in Adobe Express. So you can actually generate content using AI with Photoshop, add it to a Creative Cloud library, and then use that content in Adobe Express. So you have two options of using, two options for getting graphics that work for your images, Adobe stock or the AI in the Photoshop beta. So I recommend that you check those out. But anyway, once you're back in Adobe Express, and for some reason my browser was not coming up. Let me try it going through here. Once you're back on Adobe Express, you can go back into your libraries and make sure that you're in the library where you use the AI content, where you uploaded the AI content. It should be there. See that? There it is right there. So maybe in this case, I could, select the lightning that's here, and it's probably not going to work great for this particular image, but you get the idea. You can use the content that you create using AI on Adobe Express. So that is one option. Also, something fantastic about Adobe Express is that when you're done with your content, you can publish it or schedule it to share on social media. So if I select publish, you'll get the different social medias where you can post that content to. But even better, if you click on share and click on schedule, that will open up the Adobe Express scheduler where you can schedule the content to different platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest. So make sure that you use this feature. It's really, really useful. It's already free with the Creative Cloud if you have access to the Creative Cloud, and you'll save some money without having to go to third-party applications to schedule your social media content. You can do that all from Adobe Express, which is fantastic. So I highly recommend that you check it out. Also, something very important to note is that you can click on the download button here, and you can download the video that you generate as a MP4. Let me show you why that's very beneficial. First of all, this is the graphic that I generated that could be used for, like an Instagram story or something like that. Anything that has the 9:16 aspect ratio. But what if I want to share this as a YouTube community tab posts, which requires a 1:1 aspect ratio? Well, you can go into the resize feature here and just find any one of these templates that is a 1:1 aspect ratio. So for example, I know there's one in here for Instagram portrait, Instagram post. Here you go. This is a 1:1 aspect ratio. This will be the same thing for a YouTube community tab. And all you need to do at this point is simply just realign the content so that it matches the new aspect ratio. And obviously you can take your time fine-tuning all the different graphics to get the result that you want. And let me just put these guys, actually what I'll do is I'll put this one here and I'll drag the text layers up here so that I can place them accordingly. You can also group in Adobe Express if you want. I'm not going to take the time to do that in this stream, but you can definitely group things in Adobe Express. And I'm actually grabbing the wrong one here, so I'll drag it up and then I'll move it over. I'll probably keep this one on the side. But the point is that now that I have this new aspect ratio using the same images, I still have access to the animation. Notice how when I animate the images, everything still works great. It looks fantastic. It looks like I might need to add a little bit more contrast to this layer, but that's okay. We don't have enough time on this stream. But now that we have this new aspect ratio, we can download this as an MP4, right? So I'll click on Start Download, and it should download it as an MP4. I don't think it did it. Let me try it one more time. Yeah, it looks like it's having a little bit of an issue downloading this file. It still says saving on here, so maybe that's what the issue is. But the point is that once you have an MP4, you can go into, wait for download. Looks like it's still saving the file to download it. There we go. And the name really doesn't matter. I'm just going to save it onto my desktop. But the point is now I have an MP4 of this project, right? And I'm just going to open it up on my media player. So it's going to take a second to load here, but there you go. That's my 1:1 aspect ratio MP4. What I can do now is go to my Adobe Express homepage, and we have access to these quick actions. So I'll click on View All so that you can see all the quick actions that you have on Adobe Express. And one of the quick actions is Convert to GIF. So I can just browse on my device for that GIF. I'll click on Open. Adobe Express will open up that GIF. I can edit the intro and outro points here, and I can select the file size for these animated GIFs. I can hit play, and you can see what that animated GIF looks like, right? And I can now I'll select the medium size. That's fine. I can download my animated GIF now so that I can use it on my YouTube community tab, because for those of you that are YouTubers, you will know that the community tab can play animated GIFs. You really can't do a video. You would have to upload like an actual YouTube video to play that video on your community tab. So like a way of still having animations and videos on your community tab will be to create an animated GIFs. And Adobe Express is great at creating animated GIFs. As you can see, all you need to do is drag a video onto it and it will create it. So I can just call this one, I'll just call it GIF so it's easy to see, save it. And when I go into my community tab on my YouTube channel, you will be able to see that I can upload that video by going into my community tab here. It looks like we're running out of time, but all you need to do is just click on GIF. It downloads it to YouTube and you'll be able to play it so you can share your Photoshop composites anywhere you want on all social media. Remember to check out the Adobe Express Bootcamp. We're here all week teaching you how to use Adobe Express for your favorite Adobe applications. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Send me any messages through my website if you have any questions about Adobe Express. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.